Jake the Film Guy, Microbudgeter.com. In this video, we're going to talk about why it's not so bad for you to be failing more often than you're succeeding.
Love is a burning thing, and it makes a fiery ring.
Numero uno. When I first got my W-2 job way back when as a W-2 video producer, that's kind of redundant, bear with me, I realized very quickly I had zero backbone. If somebody shot my ideas down, I took it too personally, I internalized it, and I clammed up. I didn't share my ideas. That is exactly the wrong approach if you and I want to be filmmakers. 3.5 years of self-employment post that full-time W-2 video job taught me a lot about having a backbone. Praise God. This time around, when people shoot my ideas down, I don't take it personally. I've been through the ringer. It builds my confidence because when I fail that many times trying to get my ideas across, yes, you might think that's kind of counterintuitive that I would have that loss of enthusiasm if enough of my ideas are shot down, but the reality is I am used to it at this point. James Dyson, British inventor, went through 5,126 iterations of his bagless vacuum over a 15-year time span until he landed on the one that works. Can you imagine having to go through that many iterations to get to the one that works? I don't think most of us would last that long, but nonetheless, we need to have that same kind of grit, that kind of backbone when it comes to pitching. And I do believe that the more we fail in our pitches, the more often we will be a little more confident. I know, it's backwards. It's like pinning a wrestler with his own weight. It's like using the objection that a client throws at you to close them on whatever it is you're trying to close them on. It's sort of a give and take and sort of a backwards feeling thing, but I promise you, the more you do this, it will build your confidence. Failure is not the enemy, which leads me into number 2. It makes you more resilient. But before we get into that, hey, if you haven't already, I want you to hit the subscribe button, because if you like Scottish accents, you can find plenty of those on this channel. All right, back to the content. I mentioned self-employment earlier. This one will be just piggybacking that idea that if you fail, and trust me, when you are self-employed, especially as a video producer, you will fail more times than you can imagine. You will fail to close the deal. You will fail to get enough prospects in front of you. You will fail to get enough people to hear about your service. You will fail to close people on your ideas. You will fail to get people on your short films. If you're a budding filmmaker, you will fail to tell a cohesive story. You're going to have boatloads of failure. That will make you more resilient. Back in 2016, back when Nevada was tossing up the idea of whether to legalize recreational marijuana or not, there were two competing worldviews. The worldview that said this is a bad idea, we need to get teachers, parents, community leaders, religious leaders on one board, and then everybody else that wanted to legalize marijuana, the both of them were going to go head to head in this advertising one-on-one death match. Okay, I'm kind of over-exaggerating, but the camp that said this is a bad idea came to me and said, let's do something, let's put together a video. I came up with a proposal. It was a 5-figure video production proposal. It was going to be several vignettes that they could then pump out across all the different mediums to try to educate people. And even though the deal didn't happen, I made the critical blunder of putting all my eggs in that one basket. Oh, that kind of opportunity. It would have been great, obviously, if it had worked out. When we got close, we were negotiating numbers. We were negotiating the deposit amount, and it ultimately didn't work out. And I was really weak in my sales and closing skills back then. Nonetheless, that whole experience started what would be and is still a continuing process of being more and more resilient each time I fail. Every time I fail, I have a chance to get back up. And when I'm self-employed, if you're self-employed, you have to get back up, especially if you got a family. People depend on you. That resiliency you can't learn about up here. You have to experience it here. And the only way you can do it is to go through so many different failures that you learn to get through it and to keep your head above the water. Failure is a great teacher. There was a gig back in Tampa that I wanted to land for live video work. It would have involved several people. It was a live streaming that needed a director, a switcher, the whole gamut. Everything that you can imagine that goes with a live video. For a sporting event, they needed it. So I was putting together a team, I was getting a quote, I was helping them figure out what they needed. I was asking my buddy in Vegas, because he's a lot more savvy with the live AV stuff than Jake the film guy. And I had a really good idea of how to go about doing this. And then I hear, once I start talking to floor pricing with this company out of Tampa, I start to hear from this group that, oh, well, we got a couple of bids from these other guys here, and they're local. They say they can do it for $1,200. My jaw dropped to the floor. I'm talking like Acme Looney Tunes over-exaggerated kind of facial movements. It was ridiculous. A live streaming event, a sporting event at that, and they were going to do it for $1,200? I don't think so. I don't know how that all shook out for those guys, but nonetheless, I had to learn the hard way. That was the final straw for me. I've talked about this a lot elsewhere. I'll always harp on it with you guys. You need to qualify your prospects in the first few breaths that you have. Are you the decision maker? My services start at $4,000. Obviously, you need to be a little more tactful and dress it up a little bit more than what I just did. But nonetheless, you need to get those 2 pieces of information out before anything else, because video production is so nuanced, you can't afford to waste their time or your time. That failure was the final straw for me, and it taught me that I really need to get my act together and figure out if I'm talking to the right person and if they can afford my services in the first few sentences. That's what I've got to do, and you got to do it too. Failure's not a bad thing. You can learn from it. Failure forces you to come up with more ideas. For an unrelated and separate gig happening in Tampa, I don't know what it is about Tampa. It seems like all the AV stuff's going on in Tampa, if not Vegas. Well, there was this other event in Tampa, and I tried to get the decision maker to buy into this idea that even though I was a Vegas guy, I could still bring him top-notch work, and it didn't matter that I was in Vegas. He didn't need to go looking for local talent. I was his guy, and he shot me down. I tried a different way to get a hold of him. He shot me down. Finally, I just was up against the wall, and I sent him a really cheesy, and by cheesy I mean very lo-fi stop-motion animation video using just letter blocks on my fridge, probably something that my son had. Just little magnets, and I made a stop-motion animation video, sent it from a different email, told him I'd really like to do this project, and I'm the guy for it, and he was excited. He's like, oh, I love it, this is fantastic, you got my attention. Hey, where are you at? And that's when I told him, I'm in Vegas. And he put 2 and 2 together and realized who he was talking to. And I wasn't trying to deceive the man, but nonetheless, because he threw an objection my way of saying, you're in Vegas, I want Tampa. I treat that as an objection. I don't treat that as a no. I treat that as, okay, I need to figure out a way to earn this man's trust. After all, we do business with those we know, like, and trust. I didn't get that gig, but it did force me to come up with some new creative ways to follow up with people. Stop motion animation using the letters that are magnetized on your fridge. Who would have thought? This is what happens when you fail. You figure out a couple of different things along the way. It's a great teacher, forces you to come up with new ideas. Failure keeps you humble. I once did some video work for a nonprofit group, and I tell you what, I thought I was the cat's pajamas. I really stand by my footage. I always do, but they didn't think so, and they didn't have the guts to let me know. I found out in a very roundabout way that they weren't happy with what I did at all. Needless to say, I'm not doing any work for those guys anymore, and it was a humbling experience because even though I know my work was good, I know it was great, and I gave them a description. I let them know that, hey, I shot in a log profile. It's going to look desaturated. Don't panic. You know, I did everything I could to educate them along the way, but still, they weren't happy with it. And that was that harsh reminder that I needed, that even though I know my work is good, not everybody's gonna like it. I'm not the best video producer. I don't even say that in all of my bragging on LinkedIn and elsewhere. I might joke and say I'm the best looking video producer, but clearly I'm not the best video producer. They thought someone else who I thought their skills were far less than my own. They thought that their work was like the bee's knees. To each his own. Even Quentin Tarantino doesn't make movies that appeal to everyone. Ditto the Marvel movies, Star Wars. You can't appeal to everyone. You can't be everything to everyone. And I needed that humbling reminder. Failure affords me that opportunity. It'll afford you that opportunity as well. Which leads us to numero 6. It gets you one step closer to yes. You can only get no so many times before somebody says yes. So every time you get a no, you get a door slammed in your face, somebody hangs up on you, count that as one step closer to getting the yes that you need. Hey, till next time, keep creating with the King of Kings. Use these tools for the glory of God and the glory of God alone. If you're struggling with porn or any other kind of sex addiction, get help. Catch you on the next video. 3, 2, 1, action.
You. Enough with the theatrics. Why the cash burn?